We are back on Play It Forward with Nil Unerdem, filmmaker, writer, director, producer of a very, I would say, delicate short film called Pearl in the Window. Thanks for being on this show today, Neil.
Yeah, thank you.
Would you like to introduce yourself or your film, or even both, or none, prior to the three official questions?
Sure. Yes, my name is Nil, and I'm a filmmaker from the Bay Area, California, but originally from Istanbul, Turkey. And this film came about just kind of unexpectedly, and I was lucky to be able to make it with a group of local filmmakers in the Bay Area. So, um, yeah, it's kind of a simple story, and I just hope that it ends up kind of being kind of moving for whoever watches it,
For
hopefully.
sure, for sure. I mean, that's the goal for all of us as filmmakers. We really want to move our audiences, and it's deceptively simple. The film could be, at first glance you watch it, you're like, oh, okay, you don't know how much you have or love something until it's gone, kind of thing. But it's a little deeper than that, and I think maybe even a lot deeper than that. I mean, that's a very deep thing as well, and commonly overlooked by all of us at one point in time or another. And as we try to learn that lesson, I think there's even a little more nourishment in this film to help us learn that lesson, and specifically with the setup of the caretaker cared for relationship, and that sets up a little bit of a unique dynamic in it. So before talking more about the moral and the message and the themes around it, I just wanted to ask you, when you first got the inspiration for this idea, pre oral linguistic concept, what was that like synaptic moment for you that said, okay, I, yeah, I'm going to think this and do that with this film?
Yeah, so it actually came about more. It was first there was a writing prompt about sound, and actually using sound as a major character in a film, and so I started thinking about a short story about somebody who is oversensitive to loud sounds, and uh, then kind of thought about I have a great aunt who lives in Istanbul, who she's 98 years old, and she lives in a little apartment overlooking a park, and the only interaction she has with anyone is her caregiver who comes in every day to cook for her and look after her. So I kind of started thinking about that relationship, and then also if a person like that might have some issues with sound, and how also about how elderly people often, as they get older, there's loneliness and isolation, and how that can sometimes turn into this cycle that may lead to depression, and also just not having any kind of connection with anyone except that one person who comes to see them every day. So that's where it initially started, or I started thinking about it, and but I wanted to tell the story of the both of them, more of like a two-parter or two-hander, and uh, so I had to cut it down quite a bit, though, for this story. So the initial story had a lot more with the caregiver, um, and uh, just that relationship was one I wanted to kind of explore a little bit.
Yeah. I guess on the nature of the relationship, it's like, where in your life has that did you draw upon for um the conceptualizing, and also for, again, that like desire to either explore the subject or reflect on it, or visualize it?
Um, the inspiration for
Yeah, I guess where in your life and experience, did you, because mentioned how the idea kind of got birthed, and to bring these two things together with sound, and an aunt that you knew. It might be sensitive to sound, but where do you think in your makeup, in your history, the desire to explore this theme and subject came from?
Um, well, I had a really deep relationship with my grandmother, so I was very close to her. And
Did you say grandmother? Did you say aunt? I'm sorry.
grandmother,
You said grandmother initially. Okay.
grandmother initially, right? So,
All right.
I always kind of associate her um, with like being in Turkey and living very far away from her because I grew up in the U.S. So seeing her very seldomly, like we'd see her in the summers when we go visit, and I always really cherished those times to be close to her. And then when I was away from her, it was really hard. And so here it's kind of like the opposite. It's like if you start taking that for granted, that someone is there for you all the time, and then when they're gone suddenly, what might lead you to kind of wake up and think about how valuable they are to you, actually. But um, I think it was just really kind of thinking about my great aunt now currently, and how her life might be.
I see.
Not that she has that relationship with her caregiver. I think it's a
Yeah.
much closer relationship she has, but I was just kind of thinking of different people in my life and kind of putting them into the personality of this elderly woman, but also myself, just how sometimes you can get into a mode where um, if you're isolated and you just start taking or things or people or your situation, you don't really you may not appreciate some things and have to remind yourself to kind of start to think about what it is that you do have. And so a little bit of, yeah, like a waking up moment, um, and remembering how valuable a person might be to you, you know.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's so important. I mean, I think about, for me, and as you're talking, I mean, how it relates to me is having a family life, and we have a 4-year-old, and I have a wife I mentioned earlier, and me and my wife don't always see eye to eye on what actions to do when the responses, how to respond to the actions of the child. And so I'm just like, throwing my hands up I have to bite my tongue. I don't bite my tongue where I should bite my tongue. And all of that kind of snowballs into this repetitive wake up, go through this like behavior, and then you're really, it comes to a point where you're not seeing that you have this loved one in your life who has devoted their life to you, who is willing to do anything and everything, and you're in your own microcosm really nitpicking all of the stuff that you think might be right, that's not right, that and you don't even know. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. It's quite possible I'm wrong about everything, so maybe not everything, but a lot of it, most of it. And so, it's just how do you kind of step out of that cycle and not have a horrific, devastating event happen to you and say, oh God, I, screwed up. I did it all wrong. I wish I had it to do all over again. And that can happen like this big stage or even a little stage. Like, you have a visitor from out of town, they're staying in your house, they start pissing you off because you're not cleaning the dishes. And then you're like, this is my best friend. I love him. How can I, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there are so many of these situations, and in this situation, did you have something to say?
Oh, I was just
Oh,
going to say though, it's also, it seems natural. It feels like everyone kind of goes through that,
of course, yeah,
you tend to the repetitive things, everything's relative also, right? But um I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with being that way, because I think everyone gets into those modes. But then I think it's for me at least, I try to remind myself or have these little kind of waking up moments where you step back and say, wait, you know, um, I should look at this from another perspective.
yep. And that's the magic word. How do we wake up? And I'm so glad you said it. There's nothing really wrong with that. I mean, we are human. We, don't want to necessarily penalize and judge ourselves for it, but how do we wake up and really, appreciate what we have and get into that attitude of gratitude, but even beyond. I mean, to really see the world with fresh eyes and eyes that aren't clouded by judgment or
Right.
longing, you
Mhm.
know. So to get into, kind of the moral, I mean, we've been talking about this idea of not recognizing what you have or not valuing what you have until it's gone. But, in your film and what really prompted to me to recognize this, kind of layer that feels like it's even supporting that as an understructure in a more deep way, as mentioned earlier, is this idea of visual idea of the plant. You have the plant in the beginning and the end, and the end, the plant is thriving. And, that prompted me to realize, oh, yeah, as you care about others more, it enables you to care about yourself more and tap in. We can only love others as much as we can love ourselves, right?
Mhm.
So that is all of a sudden a very different message or opening. So from your standpoint as a viewer and a creator, how do you feel about these themes and messages and what would you like a viewer to maybe appreciate, or what do you yourself appreciate about the film now?
Yeah, the metaphor of kind of opening, and also the windows are closed in the beginning, and then at the end she's kind of more open
Mm,
and there's more light,
yeah,
and in the beginning it's very dark and kind of blue. And with the plant as well, I just feel like, maybe Pearl's soul in the beginning was having a tough time and she was going through um, a lot of loneliness and kind of seeking connection, and waking up and kind of realizing that Ada is so valuable to her, and is her friend and she misses her, and having her back in her life, um, that opens up something in Pearl. And I think, just like you said, caring for someone else can really help you care for yourself and help you heal your soul, as well. So that's definitely one of the themes. And then actually during production, we came up with another. So my favorite part was really working with the actors, these two women, um, and from, very different cultural backgrounds, both like in real life and in the film, and how they each deal with struggle in their life. And so Ada's obviously got her own struggles as well. Um, and just with talking with the actors about where each woman starts and where they both end, and they've kind of switched positions by the end of it. Um, with starting off as a caregiver and the one being taken care of, and by the end, Ada has gone through a health scare, and she's now thinking, why am I doing this, taking care of this woman who's not very grateful and always grumpy and mean to me? And now, I've gone through this life altering health scare, and what do I do? She has a new outlook on life a little bit, and so kind of coming to terms with um, how she's looking at the world now and how Pearl is looking at the world, and they seem kind of to have switched places. So um, and we realized that during production. So that was what was so cool, is that I think that the groundwork was there in the script, but talking with the actors about their characters
yeah,
kind of really brought that to light, and also helped with the what they wanted to bring to the performances. Even though it was very brief, but we really felt it like off screen.
yeah. No, that's so important. I really love what you said about opening and then, reflecting on what you're doing and why is it worth it. But, to go back to the opening part, it's like you kind of go through life or a journey like a movie or script or any work of art or book or studying something, and you keep going to this high. You go from these different stages into this encompassing, the one that it frames and encompasses everything. And I think for me, opening really does that because it has all the other kind of ideas inherent in it. And how do you open? And this kind of really puts the emphasis on opening to others. If you're closed off to others, you cannot, you're closing off a part of yourself ultimately.
Yeah.
And that is such a life lesson, um, for us to learn and to be able to work with.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Opening and connection, right? So connection
yes.
is really key. And
Yeah.
to, you know, as I've written more and more, I start to realize that like I tend to kind of hover around those themes about kind of waking up and connection and some, you know, loneliness and sometimes regret, but kind of like these changes that happen to a character and um, looking at the world in a new way. Um, yeah,
There's a spiritual teaching with regards to what you're saying with connection, and opening. And the teaching is do what you will with people, but don't put them out of your heart. And so the way I understand it is sometimes you have to disconnect yourself from people in a physical way or in some sort of way that's healthy for us, but not to put them out of our hearts. And
mhm.
that, is a very difficult thing to do, with the people that we may not agree with or may think are immoral or are immoral. For example, there's all this layer, or all these different circumstances that can make us, justifiably or not, want to eject somebody from our heart. And even if we do that, there is a part of ourselves we're cutting off, that openness to the universe.
Right, right.
And that blows my mind. And it's definitely, something that is in this piece.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's really nice to hear. And um, I hadn't really thought about it like that, but I think it's definitely there. That's what it's trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Last question to play forward. How have you been changed as a person since making this movie?
Oh wow. As a person, well, making a movie is so hard that I've started to, well, I mean, you know, making this movie was kind of unexpected. I never really thought was going to make it, but going through the whole process of making it was a really great learning experience for me and kind of brought me back to what I love about filmmaking, which is directing. So I hadn't done that in a long time. And I recently have like started to try to pursue it full time again. So um, I realized that I do love writing and directing after this. And as a person, I just feel like I know a little bit more about the things that I would like to write about, um, and the themes that I would like to focus on. Everything that we've been talking about, I think, is central to what I'd like to write about, which is really good to know because often, you know, you may start a project and not really know where it's going, but everything that you've lived in your life and all of your life experience kind of feeds into the characters that you create, and the stories you want to tell. So that has just kind of brought it more into focus for me after making this film.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Self awareness, greater self awareness.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. I really enjoy the pronunciation of your name, and I do not want to butcher it. So, can you help me first? And then I'm going to try it again.
Okay, it's Nil Unerdem.
Nil Unerdem.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty good.
Pretty good. It's like my name. It takes a few tries. You got to practice it,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it sounds French the way you say it.
Oh, well, I think the U sound
Uh-huh.
exists in French and
Is
in Turkish.
Oh, is
So
that right? Is that what it
yeah,
is?
yeah. So
Oh,
Unerdem. Uh, yeah, like if you know how to speak French, I think that the
it comes
sound.
easier.
Yeah.
It's a lovely name, and you're a lovely person. Thank you so much for being in the show. It's a lovely film, and everybody.
For watching it and for you know, this whole interview was really nice. And
Uh,
I also spoke with Drew Highlands. I think you
yeah,
spoke with him recently, and he he spoke very highly of you, and he was like, he's awesome. So,
Oh,
I'm really like, it's a small world, so it's really cool to, um, meet other filmmakers who have been
thank you.
with you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It definitely gives me a little more air underneath my wings and inspiration. Thank you to keep going. Really appreciate it. I will be in touch, and we will be in touch. And I want to see more work from you, and we will hopefully do this again.
All right, great. Thank you.
All
Thank you so much.
right.
All
Bye
right.
bye. A
Bye.
pleasure.